Birth of a King. Third person POV. Welcome soul to the in-between. A deep voice spoke to Robert as he floated through the darkness. Who's there? Where am I and what is going on? I thought I died. Robert said in quick succession. Indeed, you died. Now you are here in the place between all places to decide what will happen now. Okay, and what does that mean? It means you are given a choice. Normally this talk would go faster since most who come here know about fanfictions and the whole reincarnation trope. Yeah, didn't like those. I did read manga though, if that helps, and comics too. Well, a bit then. Isekai is pretty much what will happen to you if you want to. For real. Wait. Will I get something to help me, or will it be a terrible experience? You will get to make one wish. Oh, that's sick. Okay, where am I going? Do I know it? Robert asked excitedly. No. It is a world called, A Song of Ice and Fire, or Game of Thrones. ASHIIIIIIT. Why though? I never saw more than a few shorts on YouTube. I stopped after the prince, what was his name, the one with the spear? A Baron Martell. That's the one. I stopped watching the shorts when I saw his fight with that mountain. When I saw that, I stopped and wasn't sad about it. Too bad for you then, cuz that's where you're going. For real. Is there no other option? There is Boku no. No. Oh magnanimous sir, please forgive me for my slight and the terrible words I have spoken to your graciousness. I will take anything that you will give me. Haha, that was fast. Alright then, what do you wish for? Well. Could you at least tell me what the world is about again? I think something about politics in a medieval setting, right? To put it simply, yes. It is filled with intrigue and deception. Everyone wants a piece of the power pie and you, specifically, will be one of the top contenders for the throne. You will be reincarnated as Robert Baratheon. That fat guy whoremonger. Indeed. Oh bother. What would you suggest then? I would suggest you wish for something that will help you on your journey to the top. You will live in a shark tank constantly, should you choose to become king. But, spoiler alert, you won't have much choice in the matter. Well then, how about something that will help me become a good king? I should have the necessary power, both physically and mentally. Something which will allow for me to grow, you know what I mean? Robert asked. I know what you mean and I have the perfect thing for you. Truly. What is it? It's called a meta-essence. You would know about it if you had read any fan fiction. Basically, it is a small vial which allows you to gain a set of boons. The one I am thinking about it quite fitting, it's called the Essence of the King. The Essence of the King. Sounds fitting indeed. What does it do? Let me display it for you. Essence of the King. A body just above the peak of your species in ability, one sculpted to your tastes. Infinite willpower to tackle any foe, even bloody and broken you will not stop. Endless endurance, stamina, and immunity to pain. A signature bloodline with several benefits up to your discretion. Can pass on to your descendants. Perfect memory with infinite storage. Mastery of many weapons and unarmed styles, even just plain old brawling. Immense skill in conducting war on a strategic and tactical level. Good handle on logistics and how to raise and train a force from a small band of soldiers to entire armies. A mastery of economics, logistics, politics, and other things needed to run a functional power. Charisma to bend the will of entire nations and the sheer presence of a monarch that others would describe as divine. So what do you say? Well, it's not bad truly, but I can see a few problems here. Oh. Do tell. Well, for one, there is no healing here, which would make it susceptible to poison, assassinations and death on the battlefield as any other person. Then there is the lack of intelligence. That is more or less dealt with since the mastery of economics, logistics, politics part. But any other problem can be solved quite easily with the bloodline part. Can I choose now? Sure, go ahead and choose. Well, I would like this. And then this as well. No, let's say it like this. Oh yes, that's good. Yes, and let me do this as well. Good. Finish. Robert says. I see. Yes, that will truly cover all your weaknesses. You truly did read comics Not bad. Alright, then what about the body? Well, I was thinking of something ripped and not that lean, since I know that the king was hailed as a big and strong dude. So how about this? Robert said. Picture. You want a mix between those two? Yes. I think that would be good. The bloodline will allow me to keep my agility and speed intact anyway. Sure. I'll give you the black hair, full beard and blue eyes, like all the Baratheons. Cool. So is that it? Robert asks. Indeed. I wish you the best of luck in your endeavor to become king. Or not, it's your choice. Thanks, man. 262 AC. Storm's End. The Lord of House Baratheon, Stephen Baratheon and the Lord Paramount of the Stormlands were pacing back and forth in front of the room, where his wife was giving birth. He was nervous, something that the Stormlord wasn't used to. He was a Baratheon and lived in Storm's End, there wasn't much that could make him nervous. And yet, here he was pacing back and forth as he heard his wife screaming like she was pushing. Never mind. This has been going on for hours now and it didn't look very good. But unlike other noble ladies, Cassandra was a strong woman, so Stefan had faith she would survive. Finally, after a grueling 10 hours of pushing, the heir of House Baratheon in the Stormlands was born. A healthy and particularly strong boy, Robert Baratheon. The life of Robert was a special one. He was considered a very bright child. Gifted both physically and mentally. His maturity was unquestionable. Poor Robert didn't account for the boredom he would feel and the humiliation of being a baby and then a child. Being a baby was fine, as long as you weren't aware of what you had lost. Thankfully, his parents were good to him and loved him greatly. The Rob had given Robert another final gift and made his transition smoother. This allowed him to see his parents as his real parents and started to love them for real. When Robert was not yet 2 days old, his younger brother was born, Stannis Baratheon. Robert was happy about having a younger brother to spend time with and contrary to his own beliefs, he fell in love with his brother immediately. The younger brother was rather serious and stubborn all the time. The only one who could get a reaction out of him was his older brother who unnerved him, to quote Stannis himself. But if we use Japanese terms, then Stannis was a bit of a tsundere. At least in all things that concerned his brother, which was attributed to the boundless charisma Robert had. Robert tried to learn as much as he could as a child. He knew that he would need it sooner or later and thanks to his perfect memory with infinite storage, he managed to read all the books in the library at Storm's End very fast. He listened to the talk between his parents and asked questions. The charisma of Robert became apparent as soon as he could talk and walk around. He was adored at first and then loved. During his childhood, Robert would ask their master at arms at Storm's End to accompany him to see the village. It started out as a simple interest on Robert's part. He was getting restless and wanted to see other things. But as he walked through the streets of the village, Robert was surprised at the bad living conditions for the common folk. Stephen Baratheon Pav. Robert was a strange child, boy and then young man. He was always smarter and more mature than his age would have you believe. He was a quiet child but one who would still laugh and smile a lot. His laugh was very contagious. I was always surprised at the amount of charisma my son had, even at an early age. But he had a serious side to him, and that was something that became apparent when he visited the village around Storm's End. I still remember the day my master at arms came back from his little tour of the village with Robert. He told me that he had never seen the young lord like that. He could tell that it was serious because Robert didn't smile or even speak as they walked through the village. Only later on would I understand what had happened. The next day, Robert said he wanted to go to the village again and I of course allowed it. He was mature and with the Esser, nothing would happen to him. The headaches I got after that day will always stay in my mind. What I didn't know when he asked me to go to the village the second day, was that he had taken all the money he had and given it away to the poor. I don't know what brought that up and I was both proud and annoyed at Robert. It would only create problems later down the line. Because the people would take it as a normal occurrence and then expect money all the time. Thankfully, I was both right and wrong with my worries. After talking with Robert that day, he said that he wanted to improve the village economically and visually. He was unhappy with the poverty and neglect he saw and wanted to improve it. He surprised me, that's for sure. He was very serious about it and so I allowed him to make a few suggestions and told him if they were any good, I would implement some of them. What I didn't expect was that he took it very seriously and not only worked the entire night, but his ideas were rather good. He was truly a smart child. And not only that, he asked me to allow him to have carte blanche. That's what he called it. I refused of course. At least initially. He talked me into accepting. Darn his charisma and logical arguments. But I told him that I would get the final say in everything, and if I saw no improvement or God forbid a worsening of the situation, I would take over immediately. Sigh. Robert was happy about that and went to work right away. No one was allowed to know what he was planning, except for Stannis. Robert told him everything, and Stannis was the calm voice that pulled Robert back to reality. Together those two came up with plans I didn't get to see, since I had promised Robert to do as he pleased. And gods did he deliver. 6 months. That's all it took for the village of Storm's End to see the first improvements. And that was only the beginning. The MC's character is the one of Rogel Dorn, but with tons of charisma. 28 comments, 0 vote. Storm's End change. Stannis Pav. My brother was strange. He seems to be a happy and charismatic young man unlike me, but I see his serious side, ever since we started this project. Improvements of Storm's End. That's what he calls it. It all started after he went to see the village and came back unhappy. I still remember the talk he had with me after coming out of Father's Solar. Stannis, are you interested in doing some real change? What do you mean? I have seen the state of Storm's End and I am revolted. The poverty and the resulting appearance and functionality are trash. We are Baratheons and the seat of the Lord of the Stormlands looks like a few blocks of shit put together at random. I asked Father and he gave me free hand to do what I want. The only requirement is that I have to show results in the next few months. Why are you telling me this? What do you want to do then? I want to ask you, whether you are interested in changing the village, Storm's End, and therefore the entirety of House Baratheon to new heights. We shall make it great and prosperous. And I want your help, as an equal, my partner. So are you in or not? Why do you want to do that? Are you joking? The state of the common folk has a direct influence on the lords who led them. If the common folk suffer, so will we. There is a linear dependency between the wealth of ordinary people and those who led them. Besides, I want to improve the village and make it great. It just won't let me sleep, and it makes me angry that the village of Storm's End is in such a state. Fine. Stop looking at me like that. Where did you learn to look at me like that? What are you, a dog? He, I knew you would come around and see reason. Very well then. Here's what we're going to do. And here I am, going over the notes of the past months. We started this book to keep track of all our investments, as Robert called it. His idea was simple if not mad, in my opinion. Why he believes that 10 and 9 named days old young boys can do something like that is beyond me. But here we are. He showed me his idea, and as strange as it is, it seems to work. These so-called investments were simply losses or gifts in my opinion. Nonetheless, I did what Robert told me and started to note everything down. Robert granted so-called short-term loans to different people who held different positions within the city. Robert called them essential and part of the circle of wealth. I didn't know what he meant back then, but now I do. The circle of wealth describes, according to Robert, a circle of people who pass around money to one another. They buy goods from one another. Part of this circle were the blacksmiths, farmers, merchants, and other professionals like builders and guards. The reason they were part of the circle of wealth was because of Robert. He went ahead and used about 50 gold dragons of his own money and invested it into the blacksmith. He told the blacksmith that he wanted 3 things. 1. He wanted for the blacksmith to take a few apprentices. Blacksmiths usually enjoy rather a wealthy lifestyle among the common people. So getting an apprentice is ironically not good for their business. But that had to change now. Robert threatened the 2 blacksmiths who were located in the village with beatings, and that he would take away the smithy from the man if he didn't stop thinking only about himself. He quickly agreed afterwards. 2. The second thing Robert wanted from the 2 blacksmiths was the creation of farming tools, made of iron. That was also the reason for the 50 gold dragons. Robert had the blacksmiths work on that project and nothing else in the beginning. 3. And finally, Robert wanted the blacksmiths to join his newly established Builders Guild. That was what Robert called it. The Builders Guild was one of 3 guilds Robert had planned, and so far, there is nothing that I can see as bad about the idea. There was no room for arguing, and the 2 blacksmiths accepted to join the Builders Guild. This was the first stop in the circle of wealth. I wrote everything down. How much gold dragons Robert invested and to whom he gave them. He had me walk together with him to the 2 blacksmiths, and there they had to sign the page in the book, where I wrote about the contract they had agreed upon. It was smart, I had to admit. This way there would never be a problem with liars who claim they never knew about anything. The second step in the circle of wealth was the farmers. With the production of the farming tools finished, Robert went ahead and approached the 13 different farmers and their families. He was rather well received until they heard of his intentions. They didn't understand what he wanted of them. Robert explained everything to them in great detail and as many times as it took for them to understand what was going on. They were annoyed at first, that a little shit, like Robert, who was still sucking on his mother's tits, was giving them instructions on how to do their jobs. When the first farmer mentioned our mother, I knew things were going to get ugly. I knew that you could say anything about Robert. Behind his back or in front, it didn't matter. He would laugh at the insult and be done with it. If you mentioned his family though, you would suffer. The farmer learned that the hard way. Eventually, the Baratheon fury calmed down and the farmer agreed to Robert's plan. Robert gave the farmer the iron tools, which Robert had commissioned for free. That's right, Robert told them that he didn't want money as payment. Instead, he wanted to get a cut from the profits they would make. But, not right away. He told them that in order for an investment to flourish, you would have to give it time. And so he gave them a 5-year deadline. During these 5 years, the farmers were allowed to not pay any money to Robert to pay him back for the tools. But after 5 years, they would have to start paying back the interest of the loan he had granted them. Finally, Robert also invited the farmers into the Builders Guild. To make sure that both the blacksmiths and the farmers could do their jobs, Robert scouted for orphans and widows who were looking for jobs and had them help where help was needed. He warned everyone that should the children and women not be treated with respect, he would come personally and smash a warhammer on their heads. As payment, Robert gave the widows and orphans both a home and enough to eat. He also promised them 1 silver stag every month, should it go well. I wrote down everything. After 3 months, we had made 82 gold dragon in losses and I was getting rather anxious about father stopping us and ruining all our hard work. I came to believe in Robert's vision. His ambition to improve Storm's End and the village around it was infectious. After everything was set, for the blacksmiths, farmers and helpers, Robert and I started the 3 guilds he had planned. Those were, the Builders Guild, the Security Guild and the Merchant Guild. When Robert started to explain to me the scope of his idea, I was left gasping for air. I was very surprised, to say the least. The vision Robert had not only for the village or Storm's End but for the entirety of the Stormlands was impressive. He was barely 11 name days old and yet he was already thinking so big. I felt misplaced as the partner in our project. But Robert dismissed my concerns, which he could read off of my face. Robert was the only one who could read me and get a rise out of me. He told me his idea. The 3 guilds would serve as his form of control over the business in Storm's End in the beginning. The Builders Guild involves any work which involves creation and building. He even created a new official job, the construction workers and the architects. He gave them titles and positions. And the leading architect among them was, Robert of course. He gathered a small group of experienced architects and construction workers and took them under contract so that they would join the Builders Guild. They agreed since they hoped for favors from the Baratheon family. Little did they know, that Robert was dead serious. He had them create buildings and renovations and then went over it since he had the last say in all the projects. He evaluated the projects and then either approved or refused them. In the beginning, they were angry with him, since he told them their work was trash. Of the 3 architects, 2 got angry and stormed out, the third one wanted to hear why Robert thought it was trash and Robert explained it to him. Both the architect and I were surprised at the knowledge Robert possessed. He told the architect how it would work better and changed a few things. The architect was more than impressed. He accepted all the changes and pledged to Robert and me. That was a surprising twist. The Builders Guild was Robert's way of taking control over the rats in the city who wanted to exploit others. Using the guild he created camaraderie and loyalty to both him and me, since I was the one keeping track of everything and usually settled disputes. Robert placed a lot of trust in me and I was all the more glad that he did. Finally, after 6 months of planning, working, talking and pushing money around, there were the first signs of improvement. The initial batch of crops was ready to harvest and it looked like it was bountiful. The farmers came to Robert and me, especially me, to report their harvest. Robert had asked the workers whether the amount reported was true and was positively surprised when all of the farmers told the truth. The harvest was amazing and when all of the farmers had been here to report it and I noted everything down, Robert sighed deeply. I could see that he wasn't certain things would work out as he had hoped. He was unsure initially but put up a strong front to appear as strong in front of everyone. But I knew he was just worried about father taking away the reins and ruining all of our hard work. Ha 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 ha, Stannis. We did it. It worked. Can you believe it? He eventually smiled and laughed loudly, just like I knew him. And as usual, his laugh was infectious, making me smile as well. I vowed on this day, that I would help Robert in any way I could. I know that he will inherit Storm's End one day, but I will stand by his side to help him make our house, the village and even the Stromlands great. If it's Robert, I know that he can do it. Stefan Baratheon Pav. I am sitting behind my desk and look at Robert who is sitting in one of the chairs. So. The deadline is over. I start. Indeed. He says and simply looks at me. I get annoyed at that. I feel like I'm dealing with an adult here. How was it? Tell me your experiences. I tell him. I want to hear his thoughts. Well, it all started with my first trip to the village. I was disappointed with the way things looked. The people were poor and in need of help, while the rich were getting richer and more pompous. I saw the buildings and was embarrassed to call it a part of Storm's End. That had to change. I could not allow things to go on that way, and so I did. He started his tale. I listened to him and felt myself immersed in the story. He had a true talent for telling stories. Even though this shouldn't have been that interesting, I felt myself feel happy when something went well and angry or sad when he had to find different approaches. Truly, Robert would grow into a remarkable man in the future. 26 comments 0 vote. Anniversary tourney I. Discipline. Duty. Unyielding will. These are the measures by which every warrior is judged. Unarmed, a warrior with these qualities will still find victory, no matter how long or arduous the path. When girded with the sacred armaments of the Adeptus Astartes, such a warrior becomes truly indomitable. Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists. Storm's End. 272 AC. Robert POV. I block a strike from Jory Canner, our master at arms, with my own sword. I feel his strength but don't move from my spot. My strength has increased tremendously since I started training. I find that there is nothing quite like pushing yourself to your limits in both physical training and battle or sparring in this case. I am a very tall and strong 10-name-day-old child. After I was allowed to start training, I surprised everyone once again with my physical gifts and prowess. My talent for fighting seems second to none and it shows. I have no problem fighting Jory anymore. We both push and try to overpower the other, to gain the advantage in our clash. But we are about equal in power right now. I know that Jory will try to surprise me and move to the right or left, hoping that I will stumble. But that won't happen. I have long analyzed his fighting style and know how to handle him. Just as I predicted, Jory suddenly stops pushing and moves to my right and turns. He takes a big step and swings his sword in a wide arc towards my neck, to make me submit, of course. His plan is sound because if I were caught off guard, I would stumble forward and he would win instantly. But I don't stumble. I was waiting for this to happen. I stop my advancement as well and immediately duck underneath Jory's swing. I am now in perfect position to attack. I use my free right hand, to deliver a punch to Jory's stomach, surprising him. Bang. Peef. He exhales strongly, surprised at my strength. Jory, however, is not finished just yet. Years of experience serve him well and he is a strong man too. He moves back as fast as he can and that just in time. I threw another punch his way, that missed because of his quick thinking. I don't give up on my advantage and swing my sword with my left hand. The practice sword is heavy, just as I requested it to be made, and it hurts if you're hit with it. Jory has to parry the attack with I use to move towards him. I am like a bull that is seeing red, although they can't because they can't see the color red. I digress. I rush towards him, trying to use my body to crash into him and throw him off balance. But Jory is not the master at arms for nothing. He moves to the side slightly and throws a nasty left hook my way. I see it coming, but I don't care. I take the damage to deliver an attack of my own. Boom. His fist impacts my face and the armor does its thing. I feel my head rattle and move to the side with my fist. However, as this happens, my fist also reaches Jory's face and we look like two Dragon Ball characters hitting each other simultaneously. Boom. Blood runs down my nose and I have to shake off the dizziness to resume the fight. Jory is not in a much better state, although he was ready much quicker. The experience truly shows here. I believe that's quite enough. The voice of father is heard and I look to the side and see him standing next to Stannis with his arms behind his back. My lord. Jory bows slightly and my father nods. That was quite a spectacle, Robert. You made progress. Father tells me and I nod. It's all right. All right. Managing to keep up with Storm's End Master at Arms is all right. You do realize that you are 10 almost 11 name days old, right? That is more than all right for such a young man. I see father stopped calling me boy. It makes sense since I am more man than most nobles I have had the displeasure of meeting in my decade-long life. Bunch of wussies and wannabes. They speak with forked tongues and lie, flatter and plan wherever they can. Their every word is like poison, designed to kill you slowly and. Robert. Huh. You were spacing out again. I said we're going to King's Landing tomorrow to attend the tourney my friend Tywin is hosting to celebrate the 10th year of King Aerys II Targaryen's reign. Father tells me. Do we have to go? Those are so boring. All those pompous pricks with their lies and deceptions make me want to bash their brains out. We talked about this. Don't use such words and secondly, you need to get your urges under control. Father says and then walks away. I have my urges well under control. But they challenge my self-control. I say as father walks away. Stannis walks next to me and looks at the retreating figure of father. Do you think it's about finding us brides? He asks me. No, father is good friends with Tywin Lannister and Aerys, who happens to be his cousin. And we have to suffer for it. I say and move to put away the training sword. Nevertheless, we shall do our duty, as it is expected of us. You always do that, even if you tell father differently. I don't think I have seen someone with more discipline like yourself. If I didn't know better, I'd say you torture yourself. Stannis says. The harder I push myself in training, the better chances I have later on when it matters. Even though it might have seemed like I was on equal grounds as Jory, I was not. He could have ended the fight if he wanted, but he didn't. I see. Nevertheless, it also didn't seem like he was going easy on you. You will grow into a menace. Ha ha ha, we both will. What did father decide about our project? Stannis asks me. He decided to give us free rein to do as we please, but told me he would interfere should the need arise. So proceed as planned. Proceed as planned. The trip to King's Landing might bring some unexpected benefits if we play our cards right. I muse. Like what? Connections or something? Yes, that but most importantly. Information. Information. About what and why is it the most important? If you know yourself and your enemy, you must not fear the outcome of 1,000 battles, Stannis. Remember that. Who said that? Probably some misquoted guy. Nevertheless, it has merit. Information is the key to a fight. If we know what goes on in King's Landing, which is the heart of the kingdom and the cesspit of all schemes, we have a good chance of learning and adapting our strategies in the future. Even just mingling with the common folk will yield great results, I reckon. There might be some truth to that. Very well then, let us see. Stannis says. Indeed. Let us see. Now come, it is time for some food. I haven't broken my fast yet. Jory kept me going for hours already. Third person Pav. King's Landing is the capital of the Seven Kingdoms, located in the Crownlands on the east coast of Westeros. It is situated along the King's Road at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush and overlooks Blackwater Bay. King's Landing is the site of the Iron Throne and the Red Keep, which is the seat of the king, Aerys II Targaryen of King's Landing. Picture. The main city is surrounded by a wall, manned by the City Watch of King's Landing, also known as the Gold Cloaks. King's Landing is the most populous city in Westeros, but unsightly and dirty compared to other cities. Poorer small folk built shanty settlements outside the city. The stench of the city's waste can be smelled far beyond its walls. King's Landing, the principal harbor of the Seven Kingdoms, is rivaled only by Aldtown, which is larger in area but less populous. Nearby towns include Rosby and Duskendale to the northeast and Tumbleton to the southwest, while Kingswood is found south of the capital across the Blackwater. Driftmark and Dragonstone in the Gullet protect the bay from the narrow sea. Picture. King's Landing is roughly square-shaped, sprawling across several miles and defended by tall walls. It is dotted with manses, arbors, granaries, brick storehouses, timbered inns, merchant stalls, taverns, graveyards and brothels. There is a fish market. Hundreds of quays can be found in the harbor. The roads are broad between buildings, lined with trees and branching alleys and streets. The House Baratheon traveled north of Storm's End to King's Landing by boat. As Stormlanders, they were more than used to harsh weather, especially in Storm's End and Shipbreaker Bay. The journey was boring for Robert and Stannis, which is why Robert tries to keep his mind busy. He has noticed that his demeanor has become more and more like one of his favorites, Rogel Dorn if a bit brighter. He had a stern and naturally unsmiling face. His zeal was the fire of a son who believed in his father's dream for the Imperium without reservation and without question. Robert shares many similarities but also differences with Rogel Dorn. Just like Rogel, Robert is a being of thunderous zeal and stone made manifest, which is how many describe the Primarch of the 7th Legion. Rogel Dorn's idealism drove him and his legion ever onwards, never compromising, never stinting in any aspect of duty. The stone in his soul was his ability to bear whatever was needed of him, an unyielding nature, which made him both a master of defense in war and an indomitable aggressor on the attack. Those things were shared between the two. Robert was not stone cold, that was more Stannis. He liked to joke around a lot but he knew when the right time for that was. He could switch from happy-go-lucky to serious fighter in mere moments and use his head to analyze the situation. Just like Dorn, Robert had a natural love for building things and getting them to their best possible states. Robert, just like Dorn, didn't have a major weakness, he didn't have daddy issues. This alone makes him a special case in any world and therefore makes him all the more dangerous. He will not give up. No matter how insurmountable the challenge may seem, Robert will plow through the problem and come out on top. However, that is where their similarities end. Rogel Dorn was one of the most devoted sons of the Emperor of mankind. His zeal was the fire of a son who believed in his father's dream for the Imperium without reservation and without question. This devotion is something that Robert doesn't have. He loves his family, but he always questions something his father tells him to do or learn. Everything can be a deception or misinformation. This doesn't mean that Robert distrusts his father. He is just careful, because it may be that his father just doesn't know the truth either. The warning of the Rob before he was reincarnated struck Robert and he has tried to put as much knowledge to memory as possible. He is putting in a lot of work in terms of academics and martial prowess, to one day lead either his house or the entirety of Westeros as their king. During his short decade of life in the New World, Robert has made use of his perfect memory. He can't forget something anymore. That might be considered a weakness to some and it can indeed be seen like that. But with this, Robert managed to catch people in lies. Especially the nobles who visited Storm's End and did business with his father tended to lie or use unnecessary flowery words to get what they wanted. This cautioned Robert even more and made him realize the truth in the Rob's words. Apart from getting to know life as a noble and his duties as the future lord of the Stormlands, Robert has also spent some time getting good at reading people. He spends hours simply listening and watching people talk to each other and then tries to interpret their words and intentions. Micro movements of the facial muscles are what he focused on at the start. It is something that humans can't control and Robert has gotten really good at it. He will become a dangerous player in the Game of Thrones in the future. 20 comments 0 vote. Download the app for greater interaction. You can chat with me about my writing experience apart from the comments section. Taoist WDFD8H. Download app now. Anniversary Tourney 2. 272 AC. Robert POV. The first thing that struck me when we finally reached King's Landing was the smell. I know many must have said that, but it is truly bad. How anyone can live like this, is beyond me. If I were king, I would probably run it into the ground as quickly as possible. This is an embarrassment to any architect. The walls seem thick enough, but there is a major weakness in the harbor. The river gate could be attacked and it would be hard to defend that should it ever happen. The Red Keep, the royal castle located on top of Aegon's High Hill is probably the dumbest thing they could have built there. The location gives access to the part of the city, which should be the most protected. If I created a catapult and loaded it on a large ship, the Red Keep would fall quite easily. That is simply trash in my opinion. What are your thoughts, son? My father asks me as I stand on deck with Stannis at my side, looking at the city in front of us. Utter trash, that's what it is. I say with my arms crossed. My disappointment is huge and my day is ruined. What? My father asks me a bit flabbergasted. A capital city that smells like shit before you even set one foot inside, is an embarrassment for the king and anyone in the kingdom. Then there are quite a few things I would have done differently when building it. The river gate seems to be specifically weak. Creating a harbor this close to an entrance is asking for it to be attacked sooner or later. Also. Alright, enough. Sai, promise me that you will not speak like that ever again. It is treason to even think like that. Do you understand me, Robert? Father asks me and looks into my eyes. His strong hand is resting on my shoulder, telling me he is serious. Of course, Father. I would never speak the truth when others could hear it and be offended by it. You know I'm not an idiot. I tell him. Grown since you started to take things more seriously, I have started to get these headaches constantly. Father says and then walks away to prepare for the docking. Stannis and I look at his retreating back with our usual expressions. Do you really think someone would be so bold to attack King's Landing? And that it would work? Stannis asks me. Indeed. The Targaryen house has lost their dragons for nearly a century, bringing them down to earth like the rest of us. And now, they are just as special or not like everyone else. The threat of dragon fire has long passed and the greed of men and women hasn't lessened. From what I'm hearing, the current wannabe lizard is growing madder by the day and many are unhappy with his rule. Should he give the kingdom enough reason, a rebellion is not unthinkable. You are speaking dangerous words, brother. But you're right. There is that chance now. We make our way off our boat and across the harbor. I look at everything and add it to my ever-growing memory. This might prove useful in the future. You never know what will happen in this world. Never. The only thing that is guaranteed is the greed and scheming for man. I take it as it is, an obstacle to deal with. The guilds I am creating are an answer to this problem. It is a long-term investment and one of the reasons I am investing so much money into Storm's End and the village. I will be sure to gather people. Not loyal people, that comes later. Our entourage moves across the harbor and we walk through the river gate, which is called Mud Gate by the population of the city as I've come to understand. We reach Fishmonger's Square, which is a market square inside the river gate. I look around and take in every face I can. I have gotten some training in doing that since I spent a lot of time in the village of Storm's End for the last couple of months. But this is still something completely different. So many people walk about and do their business. I try to take in the atmosphere around here to get a feeling for the situation I find myself in. Because no matter what it might appear on the outside, in this city, there is constant war. The best way to keep yourself informed of the current state is to keep abreast of the times, identifying the latest trends and rumors. The common folk know more than you could imagine. The Romans understood this fact. If the people are happy, the leaders may stay in office. Stannis looks at everything like I do, but I can see there is disgust making its way through his stern visage. He has trouble dealing with the smell and I understand him. It is a problem. Thankfully it is getting better. I am forcing myself to deal with this uncomfortableness. We make our way across the Hook after leaving Fishmonger's Square. The Hook is a narrow, steep and curved street in King's Landing linking the muddy way at its foot and Aegon's High Hill at its top. The Red Keep is the one thing where it seems like the Targaryens really put some effort into it. There are signs of renovations visible to my keen eye. Building things has become one of my passions and I spent a lot of time creating plans for Storm's End. True, it is one of the greatest castles in Westeros, but that doesn't make it the best it can be. Why would I stop making things better if I can? Of course, I don't have the funds or the manpower to do that, yet. What do you say, brother? Stannis asks me. What's there to say? It's the Red Keep. I say, telling him we can't speak openly here. He nods his head and we proceed to make our way to the throne room, where King Aerys II Targaryen is waiting for us with his wife. Although I'm not sure whether that is truly the case. The king has a reputation for not caring about anything really. Dum dum dum. Announcing the esteemed Lord Stephen Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, head of House Baratheon, and Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, accompanied by his lady wife, Cassana Baratheon, and their children, Robert Baratheon, heir to Storm's End, and Stannis Baratheon. We are announced and father motions for us to follow him. We move towards the throne, where King Aerys II Targaryen is sitting on the Iron Throne. He looks bored and disgusting. Those long fingernails almost make me want to scratch my eyes out. When we reach the bottom of the Iron Throne, we all bend the knee. Stefan, you look good. It's been long since you were here to visit me. I was wondering whether you were scheming or something like that. The king says. If I were alone at home, I would furrow my brow and look at the man in question. But here, every move you make, every word you say or don't say, will be used against you. Haha, your grace jest. I would have loved to come to King's Landing if there was such a chance. But troublemakers behind me kept me occupied for a long time. And it seems that it's not getting any better. I hear father say. This almost makes me break my stone mask. The deception. The betrayal, man. He used us. How could he? Oh well, it's not wrong though. I guess that's the payback for his headaches. Ha 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 ha, Stefan. I knew you were loyal. Come, we have much to discuss. I look at the king's face and see that his words are only partially true. There seems to be something lingering underneath that mask he wears. A small flickering flame, which threatens to grow stronger and consume. I see. That has to be what the Rob meant when he said the thing about being king. Let's hope it isn't set in stone. The day continues and we are forced to attend the court for hours to give the appearance of a good and healthy family that has not only one but two healthy heirs should the need arise. We are little more than exhibition pieces right now. Cool. Time to take a gander at the other pieces. As the dinner starts, I look around the tables. These are all lords and ladies of prominent and noble houses. Some even have their offspring with them. I only partially listen to the discussion of some minor lord next to me as he talks about the problems of some stonemason he had in court the other day. He is pathetic and not worth my time. I don't make a secret of my lack of interest as my eyes wander across everyone I see. So much bullshit is being thrown around the room, that it makes the rest of King's Landing smell pleasant. This place needs a good trash collector and I am more than willing to act as one. Or not and simply stay in Storm's End and the Stormlands as I improve them. My eyes wander along the people sitting at the tables before they finally reach the top one, where the royal family and the closest advisors are sitting. There is one person who is actually looking at me. Tywin Lannister. Our eyes lock for a moment. I see it. I take everything in and then look away. He is dangerous. Duly noted, the head of the Lion's house is dangerous and it seems he has come to the same conclusion about me. Or he sees me as an intelligent boy. I broke the staring to appear weak and nervous. Like his gaze was unnerving me. In truth, I am wary of him now. I know about Tywin Lannister from father as they were pages at the same time and are friends. The Lannister gold mines and their money overall are what makes them one of the most powerful houses in Westeros. Not only that, with a man like Tywin at the head, he is bound to raise his house even further. As my gaze wanders away from Tywin and lands on the two smaller blondes next to his wife. I understand the reason for them being here. It is as I said, exhibition pieces. And Tywin Lannister, the hand of the king has his ear. The king has a male heir who is only a few years older than his daughter from what I've read. Rhaegar Targaryen was born in 259 AC and Cersei Lannister in 266 AC, making him 7 years older than her. This is more than acceptable in this world. Here you could also marry someone as old as your grandfather or grandmother and it wouldn't really matter. So showing off the first signs of beauty to the king and especially to the young prince is not a bad play. I would have not done that though. Doing holds more risks than it is worth in my opinion. She has seen 6 name days. No matter what she says it will be the words of a child. And if she stays quiet, she will not be seen as something special to the prince who has the hearts of many a maiden. It doesn't matter what world you are in. If the young prince is not a pedo, he won't be interested in Cersei Lannister right now. And as a young man of 13 name days, he's sure to have many maidens enchanted by his charming, Valyrian gaze. Looking at the young man now, I see a poet, a Prince Charming. Someone who sings ballads and plays an instrument to sway the hearts of women. And when I look at the king. Oh my. Things will get rather interesting. Or just annoying. 22 comments 0 vote. Anniversary tourney 3. Third person POV. The meal was in full swing. On the royal table, Cersei Lannister who is sitting next to her brother, Jaime Lannister and her mother Joanna Lannister is stealing glances at the crown prince, Rhaegar Targaryen. His Grace, Aerys II Targaryen is looking across the dining hall with narrowed eyes. He seems to think of something. He looks at his son and then at the young girl, Cersei. He suddenly has an evil smirk on his face and nods. The wine is already getting to him. Without thinking, he addresses Lady Joanna Lannister who is smiling gently and talking to her children in a whisper. Say Joanna. Did your tits get ruined by breastfeeding your brood? You always had lovely tits. He lulls drunkenly. His voice was rather loud and everyone in the hall heard him talk. No one said anything for a moment, the words first having to reach their brains and make sure they heard the king right. An awkward pause is threatening to befall the poor Joanna, and hundreds of eyes are making their way to her when another voice is heard. Ya fucking serious? Everyone looked around the room for a moment, confused about who said that. But a moment later it was forgotten again and everyone continued eating their food. There were only a few people who knew who it was. Stefan looked at his eldest son with narrowed eyes that spoke about the punishment he would give him, while Stannis looked the same with his stone mask. Robert's brother was studying him closely, trying to find out why he did that. He had a few theories but eventually let it be. To this day, Robert can still be a mystery to him, sometimes. But he knew that Robert didn't do anything without reason. But he would surely find out the reason for this later. Robert's mother Cassandra also looked at her son with a small smile. She knew exactly why he did what he did. As a lady herself, she knew how insulting and rude the king's question was for Joanna Lannister. She would have had to answer that question if Robert didn't interrupt everyone's thought process for a moment there. She had trouble keeping her ladylike appearance and not chuckling. She knew that her son was smart, but that he was this politically astute was still very surprising. He was only 11 name days old. She would make sure that her husband didn't punish Robert for this. The young dragon saw the reactions of the stags and connected the dots. He had an intrigued smile on his face. He would have to meet this boy soon. Under the guise of getting to know the next heir of House Baratheon, of course. The last person who knew what happened was the old lion sitting at the royal table. He looked at the young stag with narrowed eyes. Robert had stopped listening to his neighbor and was instead the one talking. He was spreading his charm across the table and started to affect those who listened to him. His skill in getting people's attention would be legendary in the future, but it was already showing now. The old lion watched this happen in order not to have to look at the king. His anger was threatening to explode when Aerys asked his wife that. Contrary to popular belief, Tywin Lannister loved his wife Joanna deeply. This would have consequences. The next day, the anniversary tourney started finally. Tywin Lannister wanted to resign on that day, but King Aerys refused and told him he wouldn't be allowed to resign, further angering the old lion. Robert walked through the field of preparing knights and lords. He observed everyone and recognized some of them from the dinner last night. He looked at their equipment and tried to get a feeling for why they attended the tourney. Some were poorly equipped, like some knights who were looking to make some money. Others were in shining armor, a sign for never using it except in tourneys. He walked to a place that looked like a medieval fighting ring. Two men were sparring with swords right now and some people were watching. He also took some time to watch and observe their fighting styles. The heavy armor and swords were clearly slowing them down. He had noticed that when sparring with Jory back home. Robert personally didn't have a problem with the weight, but it was very bad to move inside it. He would have to find a better armor or create his own. Like the Astartes armor. But that would take a long time. The idea was not bad though, in his opinion. Food for thought. The two knights continued slashing at each other and Robert saw that one of them was holding back quite a bit to give the other a chance and a good fight. Clang. Shing. The better knight played around for a bit. He blocked an overhead slash and then moved closer to the other knight. He reached close enough and punched the other knight with his armored fist, stunning the man. He then moved faster than before, swung his sword to the side and brought it back up. In a fluid motion, he positioned his foot behind his opponent and pushed him, causing the man to fall to the ground. Do you yield? He asked the man on the ground, while holding his sword at the man's neck. I yield. Well fought, sir. I knew I wouldn't be your opponent, but to lose like this. I still thank you for your time. The man says. Nonsense. You fought well. I can see great potential in you. The knight said and helped the other one to his feet. Robert was the only one still standing there and watching the interaction between the two. Everyone else had already gone back to doing their own thing and preparing for the upcoming tourney. Robert was far more interested in the interaction. You only get to know someone when they think no one is watching, so this was informative for Robert. He saw from the interaction between the older knight and the younger one, that the older one was not only more skilled, he was also a good man. He took the time to give the younger one some tips on how to improve and even asked him about his day and other small talk. But none of it was just to be nice, he was seriously interested in the other man. After a while, the older knight looked at Robert and smiled. He approached him until he stood right in front of him. Well lad, is there something I can help you with? He asked. Why do you ask? Robert asks confused. You were watching us for a while now. So I assumed you were interested in talking to me. The knight says with a smile. Well, since you ask, there is something I would like. Oh. And what is that? I wanted to have a spar with you. Robert says. Haha, if that's the case, then let us get to it. Do you have a preferred weapon? The man asks good-naturedly. Not really. I like the warhammer, battle axe and the sword. But since there aren't any warhammers or battle axes here, I'll take a sword. Those are free to use, right? Robert asks, pointing at some wooden training swords. Those are free for everyone to use. Good. Robert goes over and picks a sword that is heavy, like a real sword. After finding one that seems to be acceptable, he walks to the center of the ring where the knight is already waiting for him. He also has a wooden training sword in his hand and is leisurely waiting for Robert. All right, lad. Let's see what you can do. We don't have to go for points. Let's do this, Sir Knight. Robert says with a grin starting to form on his face. He gets into position and then rushes towards the knight who has a casual smile on his face. Robert swings his sword towards the knight when Robert. The voice of his father is heard. Robert stops his swing and looks to the back where his father and brother are coming towards the ring. Stannis has the same stone mask he always does, while Stefan. Oh, he looks livid right now. He enters the sparring area and walks towards Robert. What is it, father? I was just about to spar with this fine knight here. Robert says. But his nonchalance only serves to make Stefan even madder. You little rascal. Who told you to just leave? And in those clothes as well. You don't just challenge a King's Guard boy. Stefan says. He looks at the knight who turned out to be a King's Guard with an apologetic face. Sir Barristan, I apologize for anything he might have said. He has no manners. Stefan says towards the old knight. The man in question only looks confused at the situation. Lord Baratheon, this is your son. At least until I disinherit him. Stefan says towards his son. But Robert doesn't look guilty at all. Rather, he looks bored with his hands behind his head. Sir Barristan's confusion was not unwarranted. Robert didn't dress like an heir of House Baratheon should or would. He was in rather casual clothes he got from the village back in Storm's End he used to exercise. Father, I don't know what's wrong here. I didn't even hit him yet. Why yet? You don't hit a King's Guard. Ha 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 ha, Lord Baratheon, I take no offense to this. I was the one to approach young Robert since he was observing my previous bout with another knight. I was confused about who he was because of his clothes and didn't address him as a lord. I apologize for that. Nonsense, Sir Barristan. It is his fault for not dressing properly. Those are my training clothes, though. I like moving in them. If I get the nice ones dirty, Millie will have more work to do. Robert says. Millie was one of the maids responsible for the two Baratheon boys. Robert sees her as part of the family, even though she refuses to be seen as such. Sigh. What am I going to do with you? Praise me for my great thought process. Robert asks with a big grin. Bonk. As if. But since Sir Barristan graciously offers a spar, you may accept. All right. Let's do this. Robert says and gets into position. You won't win this, brother. Stannis finally says something. He has been observing the back and forth with amusement. It just never showed on his face. Ha ha ha, of course not. But we don't know unless I try. Besides, this can get my blood moving. I admire your enthusiasm, young Baratheon. Shall we start? Sir Barristan asks. Of course. The two get into their positions and wait. So you're a King's Guard. That I am. Why are you scared now? Bahahaha, you jest. I'm pumped. Pumped. I don't understand that idiom. You mean idiot. The voice of Stannis is heard from the sidelines, causing many of the spectators to laugh, and Robert laughs as well. Bahaha, Stannis is right. Now let's go. Robert says and attacks. Robert uses more of his strength right off the bat, now that he knows he is sparring with a King's Guard. He swings his sword in a wide arc towards the knight. Sir Barristan blocks the attack but is surprised when he feels the strength behind the attack. He was using only one hand to defend. This results in the wooden sword tilting backwards. Before it can hit the King's Guard in the face and embarrass him, his years of training set in and he reflexively grabs this sword's handle with his second hand. Seeing this, Robert repositions himself and brings his sword back. He takes a step forward and stabs towards the knight. The experienced fighter deflects the wooden blade and moves to the side. Now Robert is open for an attack. Sir Barristan swings his sword down, forcing Robert to block the attack in a rather awkward position. The King's Guard uses this mistake effectively and teaches Robert something. He pushes down harder but only for a split second. This forces Robert to push back harder to defend. Already knowing this would happen, Sir Barristan lifts his sword up, causing Robert to lose his balance ever so slightly. But it is enough. His wooden sword is too far above his center, giving the knight enough time to kick him in the stomach, making him fall to the ground. Are you alright, young Baratheon? Sir Barristan asks. Bahaha, more than fine. I'm getting fired up. Again. 16 comments 0 vote. Anniversary tourney IV. Third person POV. The tourney had started and in the royal box, some notable noble families were present. Most prominent among them were of course King Aerys II Targaryen with his wife, Rhaella Targaryen and their son, the Crown Prince, Rhaegar Targaryen. The only one who is still missing is the hand of the king with his family. But they are on their way. In the Red Keep, House Lannister meets House Baratheon as they are about to make their way towards the tourney grounds. Large tourneys are held outside the city, beside the Blackwater and near the King's Gate. Picture. Ah, Tywin. It's good to see you. Are you also making your way towards the tourney grounds? Stefan asks his old friend with a smile. Tywin Lannister, the head of the Lions, never smiles. Or seldom smiles, and only if no one can see it. He looks at Stefan and nods his head. Indeed. We are on our way there, right now. The hand of the king replies. Lady Joanna, it is a pleasure to see you again. Allow me to introduce my wife Cassandra, and my sons, Robert and Stannis. This time properly. Stefan addresses Joanna Lannister with a warm smile. They have known each other for a while now, but not that close, because Tywin guards his wife like the lion he is. Welcome to King's Landing. Tywin says courtly. The pleasure is mine, Lord Stefan. Allow me to welcome you to King's Landing once again. Joanna says, smiling gently. Then she looks at the two boys. It is a delight to meet your sons. I have heard a lot about you too. She says. Lady Joanna, your beauty is unmatched in the Seven Kingdoms, second only to our mother, and your two daughters are in no way inferior to you. Robert says, stepping forward with a charming grin. Smack. Ouch. What was that for? Robert rubs his head and looks at his father. You know exactly what that was for. Stefan manages to say without exploding. But he is very, very close to doing that. Joanna's smile widens, and she chuckles softly. Tywin's expression remains impassive, though his eyes flicker with the smallest hint of amusement. You have a silver tongue, young Robert. But I'm afraid you are mistaken. This is my son Jaime, and this is my daughter Cersei. Joanna says, amused at Robert's words and the Baratheon family's dynamic. Forgive me, Lady Joanna. With such fine looks, I couldn't tell. Your son and daughter both carry your grace. Robert replies, acting momentarily taken aback, and then laughs, scratching his head. It's easy to see how Robert could be confused. Your children are as striking as their parents. Cassandra Baratheon says, bringing herself into the discussion. You're very bold for a 10-name-day-old. Cersei Lannister says with a haughty voice as she eyes Robert with curiosity. Some say it's my best quality. Robert grins. Bonk. No one says that, brother. Stannis says in an even tone after his father bonked Robert on his head again. Forgive his lack of manners. He wasn't raised enough, it would seem. Stefan says, eyeing Robert dangerously. Robert knows what that means, he will have cleaning duty for a few weeks when they get home. Stannis stands quietly beside his mother, observing the exchange with his usual serious demeanor. And this is Stannis, my second son. He's a bit more reserved but sharp as a Valyrian blade. Stefan pats Stannis on the shoulder. It is an honor to meet you, Stannis. You have the look of a thoughtful young man. Joanna nods kindly to Stannis. Thank you, Lady Joanna. Stannis nods and bows lightly. Tywin Lannister's eyes appraise Stannis for a moment, his expression inscrutable. Thoughtfulness is a rare and valuable trait, Stannis. Use it well. Tywin says in a measured tone. It seems like Tywin has met someone with whom he can relate. Or maybe it's something different entirely. There's a brief, comfortable silence as the two families walk towards the tourney ground with each other, the air filled with potential for future alliances and friendships. Or problems and animosity. Well, I hope you find the anniversary tourney to your liking. My children and I would be delighted to show you around. Joanna breaks the silence. That would be lovely. We've heard much about the grandeur of King's Landing, but we never get to visit since the two boys arrived in this world. Cassana nods her head. After that, the two families reach the tourney grounds where the tourney is already in full swing. Tywin Pav. I watch the Baratheons move through the stands of the tourney grounds, my eyes assessing each member of the family. The exchange had been brief, but it had given me much to consider. Stefan Baratheon carries himself with the confidence of a man who knows his place in the world, like usual. Nothing has changed on that front. He has changed though. Becoming a father changes someone, just like it changed me, if only slightly. His wife, Cassana, seems a fitting match, graceful and composed, fitting for a noble lady of the noble house of Baratheon. Their sons, however, present an interesting contrast. Robert, the elder son, had spoken with a boldness that belied his youth. His compliment to Joanna was daring, almost impudent, but delivered with a charm that could not be ignored. Just like his loud shout in the dining room, last night. He doesn't seem to bother about the status quo of things. The boy has a raw charisma, an energy that draws people in. It reminded me of the man Aerys once was when he rose to power, when he could inspire loyalty and command attention without effort. But even with Aerys, it was never this effortless. That boy has potential. He possesses a natural charm that can be molded and harnessed. Yet, he lacks discipline. His mistake with Jaime shows a lack of observation, a carelessness that could be dangerous. Such recklessness must be tempered. Is what I would say if I was anyone else but Tywin Lannister. He can't fool me. I know exactly that he was aware that I only had one daughter. He is intelligent, dangerously so. Then there was Stannis. The boy had barely spoken, his serious demeanor a stark contrast to his brother's exuberance. I saw in Stannis a different kind of potential, a boy who could be shaped into a sharp tool, precise and unyielding. But Stannis' silence and reserve also hinted at a rigidity that could be a weakness. Stefan had his work cut out for him. I wonder what he will achieve with his children. My gaze shifts to my own children. Joanna stood beside me, radiant as ever, her presence calming. Cersei and Jaime, their golden hair shining in the sunlight, were the future of House Lannister, my legacy. Cersei had watched Robert with a curious intensity, while Jaime had taken the mistake as an insult. But he hadn't said anything. Cersei's interest in Robert could be useful, but I am not interested in the Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. I already have my sight on another potential husband. She is headstrong and ambitious, which can be advantageous if properly directed. Jaime, on the other hand, remains unperturbed, his countenance shaken by Robert's error. I will have to change that soon. As the Baratheons disappear from view, I turn my attention back to the matters at hand. The encounter provided valuable insights, and I am a man who never lets such information go to waste. I will watch the Baratheon boys closely, ready to exploit any opportunity that arises. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear, the Baratheons will play a significant role. It is up to me to ensure that House Lannister remains the dominant force in the Seven Kingdoms. Maybe a different fostering might be a good idea. I was planning to let Jaime be fostered in the Westerlands when he is of age, but now. There might be something else that could be equally good or even better. And if Robert Baratheon would be fostered in Castle Rock, that would be even better. Robert POV. My god, is this boring to watch. I don't know how anyone could ever find pleasure in watching others shoot arrows at targets if you could do that yourself. My bout with Sir Barristan didn't go as planned. He was truly a good fighter and I could learn much from him. I will go over the fight once again when I'm alone. Wait. Why wait for it? I could do it now. Then I wouldn't bore myself to death. I close my eyes and get into a meditative state. Or I try. I have tried this already at home, but it was quieter there. I calm my breathing and try to slow down my heartbeat. 100 BPM. 80 BPM. 69 BPM. 69 BPM. Nice. 60 BPM. 52 BPM. 50 BPM. Finally, I reach 40 BPM and I concentrate on my breathing. Everything around me vanishes and I find myself in complete darkness. I have perfect memory with infinite storage. This is an overpowered ability if it is used correctly. So far, I have been using it to store any and all information I come across. I memorized books, talks and faces. After coming to King's Landing, I memorized the fight of knights or anyone who is fighting. That is the only reason I am sitting here, waiting for the melee to start. I think back to the best fighter one have seen to date, Sir Barristan Selmy. I saw him fight 2 times. Once against that younger knight, whose name I don't know, and then against me. Both times, he didn't give his all, but that doesn't matter to me. I will simply try to calculate his strength and speed according to the little information I have. And when you have a perfect memory, you never have little information. I don't know how much time has passed since I started to do that, but I think I have an approximate level of Sir Barristan ready. I visualize Sir Barristan in the darkness around me. Slowly he comes to fruition as my mind feeds the simulation, until a white silhouette of the King's Guard appears before me. He doesn't say anything and just stands there. I visualize a sword for me and then I attack. It feels weird to fight in my mind against a visualization. I adapt to it quickly though, and soon, it feels like I am back in the yard fighting Sir Barristan for real. I swing my blade at his face similar to the way I did yesterday. I expect him to block the same way he did yesterday, but I'm surprised when he blocks it perfectly and uses his superior strength to move to the side and slash towards me. Shing. Dead. I would be dead if this was a real fight. He killed me in 2 strikes. What a beast he is. Ha ha ha, that is amazing. Imagine how good I will become if I continue to train this way. There is only one thing that is missing. A mechanical voice that acts as the referee. Round 1. Sir Barristan moves with the grace and precision of a seasoned warrior. He advances me with powerful steps. His simulated sword shoots towards me. I raise my blade, trying to anticipate the attack, but Sir Barristan's speed and skill are overwhelming me. The attack connects, making me stagger backwards. A swift and fast strike to my side kills me, and ends the round almost before it begins. Defeated. The mechanical voice says. I grit my teeth as the simulation resets. I know I need to improve and fast if I want to have a chance against the seasoned knight. Round 2. This time, I tried to be more cautious, circling Sir Barristan and looking for an opening. The legendary knight's stance was impeccable, his eyes never leaving me. I lunged, but Sir Barristan parried effortlessly, riposting with a quick strike to my shoulder, to my chest and then my legs. All in a few seconds. Defeated. The mechanical voice says. I fell back, breathing heavily. I replayed the movements in my mind, trying to learn from each mistake. I have another idea and stand back up. Another try. Round 3. My movements were more controlled now. I remembered Sir Barristan's patterns and tried to predict his moves. He attacked me with the same 2 strikes, which I managed to block. But then his pattern changes after a few strikes. The knight's superior technique breaks through my defenses once again, delivering a cut to my chest. Defeated. The mechanical voice says. My frustration was evident, but so was my determination. I wiped the imaginary sweat from my brow and prepared for the next round. My will is unbreakable. Bring it on. Round 4. My stance was firmer, my grip on the sword more confident. I met Sir Barristan's attacks with better timing, deflecting blows and even managing to land a glancing strike on the knight's armor. However, Sir Barristan's experience showed as he swiftly disarmed me and brought me to my knees with a precise cut and a well-placed punch to the face. Defeated. The mechanical voice says. Despite the outcome, I feel a surge of pride in my progress. I can see the incremental improvements with each bout. My blood starts to pump now. Round 5. I was adapting quickly. I parried Sir Barristan's initial strikes and counterattacked with increasing accuracy. The fight was more balanced, though Sir Barristan's prowess still makes me sweat. Virtually. We exchange one attack after the other until a well-placed strike to my ribs ends the round as his sword cuts through my neck. Defeated. The mechanical voice says. Ha ha ha, I'm seriously getting pumped right now. Round 6. I anticipated Sir Barristan's movements better than ever. I matched the knight's strikes with well-timed parries and quick footwork. I'm not certain, but is it possible that he is getting weaker? No, I think I'm getting stronger. But that's impossible. Our swords clashed repeatedly, my confidence and the grin on my face growing with each successful block. Sir Barristan eventually finds an opening, but it takes longer this time. His Valyrian steel sword, the simulated one, cuts me in half at the waist. Defeated. The mechanical voice says. Let's go. This is the best thing ever. Another round. Round 7. My improvement is remarkable. I move with a fluidity that had been missing before, my strikes more deliberate and my defenses more solid. I parried Sir Barristan's attacks and countered effectively, managing to land a solid hit on the knight's arm. Sir Barristan responded with a swift, decisive strike, but my power is evident. He will need more than what he is showing right now to defeat me this time. I block another of his attacks at full strength and finally find an opening I can use. Xing. Defeated. The mechanical voice says. Hee hee, I am getting there. But my god, that old man is insane. Round 8. I faced I Baratheon with new confidence. My will is unbreakable and my grin threatens to split my face. My movements are sharp, and my focus is just as sharp. I parried, dodged, and countered with a skill that had been honed through each defeat. The clash of our swords echo through the virtual space as I hold my ground longer than ever before. I block another attack and find myself in a similar situation as before, but I don't make the same mistake as before. I swipe my blade to the side and plant my foot on the ground and with a powerful strike. Robert. Wake up. Why are you sleeping? Oh shit. 32 comments 0 vote. Anniversary tourney v. Third person POV. If you didn't sleep while we were watching the archery, you would not have been punished like this. Why were you sleeping anyway? Stannis asked Robert as they walk through King's Landing. Robert has made remarkable progress in his special form of shadowboxing. There were two people who Robert thought of when he came up with the training. The first was Baki Hanma. Baki is known for his unusual training methods, including shadowboxing while imagining that his next opponent is with him. This allows him to anticipate his opponent's every move in the actual fight and also helps him spot their weaknesses much before the combat. Despite not being able to master any style of combat instantly like his father, Baki is able to learn them much faster than others and coupled with his imagining makes him near equal to Yujiro. The second one is Sasaki Kojiro. Kojiro can use something called Senju Muso. Senju Muso is Kojira's innate ability and talent, allowing him to memorize and analyze his opponent's moves to simulate them inside his mind, visualizing and battling them until he finds a way to defeat them. Kojiro often uses this ability to predict his enemy's movements via mental simulations, creating and breaking down the thousands of possible attack patterns they might have by analyzing their constitution, gait, breathing and blinking all before the fight even begins. Using this, Kojiro has memorized the attack patterns of all the people he's ever faced throughout his life and, because of this, he can simulate fights with his previous opponents at any time in order to train with them and become more powerful. After doing this process for a certain period of time, Kojiro can even copy his opponent's techniques and integrate them into his own fighting style. Robert's way of doing it is a mix of both of those but would be considered closer to Sasaki Kojiro's way of doing it. He tried to do it outside of his mind, by imagining his opponent and then fighting him physically. That way, he could gain muscle memory. I was not sleeping. I was training. Robert replies. Aha, whatever you say. So what are we doing here anyway? We have been walking around randomly for an hour. Stannis asked. I am looking at the state of King's Landing. I look at the architecture, the people living here and the quality of life. I am also putting any faces of spies to memory. Robert replies as his gaze passes over men, women and children. There was a presence in this city that seemed to be nigh omnipresent. And that was the orphans. They were everywhere Robert looked. And not only that, he could feel their gazes on him. Someone was using children to spy on him and Stannis. But not only that, Robert suspected whoever it was, to use them for spying in general. There are not many that come into question. Robert had long memorized the important players of the game and the members of the small council were at the top of the list. The most probable man was Varys, also called the Spider. An eunuch from Essos, who was called here by King Aerys to act as his master of whispers. Little birds are what Varys calls his network of spies all over the Seven Kingdoms and perhaps beyond. At least that's what is said. Robert also questions the loyalty this man has to Westeros. What would compel such a man to be loyal to the crown and Westeros as a whole? He didn't grow up here. This little walk through King's Landing served to find out about the power dynamic inside King's Landing and also somewhat the Seven Kingdoms in their entirety. Thanks to Robert's training, he has become very perceptive and can pick up many things just by looking. His perfect memory and limitless storage help him create files on anyone he sees, like a computer. What do you mean the quality of life? Stannis asked. The way the small folk live and how happy they are. What they think and especially what rumors they think they know. Robert said as they reached the worst part of King's Landing. Are you finished yet? The smell has just gotten worse and I didn't think that was possible. Stannis remarks, holding his hand in front of his face. Robert though didn't react. He seemed to be fine with the smell and that was somewhat true. He was slowly adapting to the smell and getting used to it. The reason the smell just dropped in quality was due to the destination they had just reached, Flea Bottom. The poorest slum in King's Landing, the foulest and most lawless district of the city. Picture. Robert stood in place and watched the people of Flea Bottom go about their day. The bottom had a stench to it, a stink of pigsties and stables and tanners' sheds, mixed in with the sour smell of wine sinks and cheap whorehouses. You see, Stannis, King's Landing began as a boom town after the Targaryen conquest, but no one planned it, it simply grew. What had started as Aegon I Targaryen's initial foothold and stockade on the mainland mushroomed in size so quickly and haphazardly that several slum districts developed, the largest and worst of which was Flea Bottom. By 10 years after the conquest, King's Landing had reached the size of a true city, almost as large as Gulltown or White Harbor. By 25 years after the conquest, it had outgrown both of them in size, surpassed only by Lannisport and Aldtown. It is unclear when this slum known as Flea Bottom first congealed out of the mud during this rushed expansion, but the earliest chronological mention of Flea Bottom is in 49 AC. Robert started to quote the different kinds of books he had read. He had read many different books about King's Landing and had combined, compared and analyzed their contents. There was a reason why he was interested in Flea Bottom. So, why would you care about this district? The people here are more likely to attack us than any other in King's Landing. And there would be nothing anyone could do about it. Our titles mean nothing should someone rob or kill us in an alley. Stannis said. It is my belief, dear brother, that the lowest and vilest alleys in King's Landing do not present a more dreadful record of sin than does the smiling and beautiful countryside. What? That makes no sense. There are more crimes here than anywhere else. What do you base your theory on? Stannis asks. Books and my own conclusions. I care about this district because it has potential. Robert says. Potential. What do you mean? There is no other part in King's Landing that has so much potential for growth and change, like Flea Bottom. The things we could do here. No, 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 no. I know that look. You get into your building mode when you look like that. I refuse to be your partner in this project you have planned. Stannis refused before Robert could explain. But I didn't even. No. Simply no. And that is final. Stannis says. In the future, he would think back to this moment and ask himself how it ever got to that point. But we don't want to spoil him. The two stood there, watching the daily life of Flea Bottom as some people noticed them. It was rather strange for two young boys like they were, to come to Flea Bottom. So the small folk naturally took notice of them. Ironically, the one they took notice of more, was Stannis. For the simple fact, that Robert had once again not worn his nice clothes to walk around King's Landing. Oi oi oi, would y'all look at what we, avenue, air, a couple o' toffs. What are two fine lads like you doin', air, You lookin' for your mum's tits? A man with black teeth, dressed in rags asked them. He was a corpulent man and was part of a non-legal gang if his friends were anything to go by. Ahahaha. Look at 'em, dodgy, all lost like some puppies. Hee hee, d'ya reckon we could sell 'em? Might fetch us a nice price. Bah, you idiots, these two might be searched for. What d'ya think would happen if we just sold 'em? But if we're fast enough, then no one might know us. There might be some truth to that. Brother. Stannis was still wearing his stone mask, but there was slight desperation heard in his voice. Robert looked back and saw that the exit to Flea Bottom was cut off. So running was no longer an option. His brain went into overdrive. He observed everyone around him as fast as he could. He got everything about them with a short glance and then moved to the next. In a matter of seconds, he had created quite detailed profiles on them. Just what, Slummin' it for a bit o' fun. Dodgy spat, his eyes shone with mischief. Round, air, lads like you don't last long. Hey, maybe we should teach him a lesson, show him what it means to be on our turf, said another man, skinny with a face full of scars. His eyes were sharp and Robert counted quite a few knives underneath his rags. Let's see, how noble blood fares in a real scrap. The corpulent man, Dodgy, chuckled darkly. We ain't lookin' for trouble. Robert spoke. He used the same way of speaking these men used to appear like one of them. Trouble's what you found, mate, Dodgy sneered, moving closer. And, now you gotta pay the price. Maybe we strip 'em, take their clothes and leave 'em in their undies, suggested the scar-faced crook, his grin revealing more than a few missing teeth. Or better yet, someone said, we could ransom him. Bet their rich folks would pay a pretty penny to get their precious boys back. Ah, now you're thinking, Dodgy agreed. But first, let's give him a taste of the rough side. Bah. Noble, do ya know what that word means? Maybe once it used to mean something, but today, it only means that some rich folk can spit on those who weren't born that lucky. I for one know the true rulers of this place are those who work hard like you. In fact, I can prove it. I learned from a jester to do some fancy tricks. Are you interested? Robert said and had a mischievous smile on his face. Huh. Sounds of armored feet moving on the stone street were heard. Quite a few members of the city watch as well as Stefan Baratheon and his wife Cassandra had arrived at Flea Bottom. Accompanying them was Lord Simon Staunton, the Master of Laws. A small panic had washed over the Baratheon household when they found out that the two boys hadn't returned from their short trip to the Red Keep. Stefan Baratheon had gone to his old friend, Tywin Lannister, for help in searching for them. The hand of the king had quite a lot of power in King's Landing and was, of course, ready to help. But it was a fool's errand. No one in the Red Keep had apparently seen them for the last hour or so, and those who had, told the scared father and mother duo, that they had left the Red Keep long ago. This of course created an even bigger panic for the two parents, and they approached King Aerys with their conundrum. After listening to their plea, he asked Varys, his Master of Whispers, whether he knew something about the location of the two boys. Varys expressed his heartfelt sympathy but told them that he hadn't heard anything. He promised to keep an open ear though. 2 hours later. After 2 terrible hours, Varys notified the Baratheons that he had heard about two boys going to Flea Bottom and meeting a rather unfriendly crowd. A small party of City Watch was organized and the Master of Whispers also accompanied them. When they arrived in Flea Bottom, thanks to the little birds of Varys, they saw a large crowd of people circling the boys. Their laughter echoed off the grimy walls. Stefan and Lord Simon Staunton made their way to the front and pushed everyone to the sides until they reached the center where two boys were sitting and drinking some lemonade. Intel the wench says, that's 15 gold dragons. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. Robert. Stannis. Stefan shouts and runs towards his two sons. He embraces them tightly and doesn't want to let go. Eventually, he does though and lets them to the ground. He looks around angrily and turns to Lord Simon Staunton. I want everyone here, put to the block or thrown into the cells for endangering my sons. No. Father, don't, the voice of Robert is heard. Robert. What are you talking about? Nothing happened. These lovely folks just thought we were some pompous nobles who were looking down on them. But we proved to them that we weren't like that. They're good men and women. Robert explained. Aye, those are some good lads you got there, Sir Lordly Man. He's got nice tricks and a funny mouth on his face. We didn't arm him at all, I promise ya, Dodgy says. We can even give ya back your money. It was sweet, but we wouldn't ever take money from a child. We ain't that rotten yet. A woman wearing revealing clothes says, holding a gold dragon in her hands for Robert to take back. No, Matsy. I gave that to ya as a present. I wouldn't be the man my father raised if I had ya give it back, now would I? Robert tells her and closes her hand around the coin. Matsy smiles brightly and then bends down to kiss Robert on his cheek. Stefan looks at the men and women of Flea Bottom. All he sees are happy faces when they look at his two sons. Lord Baratheon. What would you like me to do? Lord Simon Staunton asks him. As the Master of Laws, he knows how hard it would be to get any sort of justice into Flea Bottom. It is a downtrodden area of town, rife with poverty and crime. A maze of twisty, unpaved alleys and cross streets, making it hard to truly capture any criminals right away. He could capture all the known thieves, but that would create civil unrest and that wasn't what he wanted. So if Stefan Baratheon wanted to have these men and women captured, he would have a lot of work on his hands and in the end, it could lead to more problems than anything. Let them go. If my sons say it is fine, then it's fine. Stefan says after thinking about it a while. He understood the burden of Lord Staunton. Come now. We're going back. Stefan says. See ya around, everyone. Dodgy, Manny, Matsy, take care of yourselves. Robert said as he and Stannis were led away by their father. Aye, you as well, Rob. Come back to visit us. Dodgy says. Don't go breaking too many girls' hearts, Robert, and you as well, Stannis. Matsy says with a mischievous smirk. Ha 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 ha. 44 comments 0 vote.